Welcome back to another episode of Boom or Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry, and today we're talking about the tight ends. Yes, 1 week out. Oh my God, so close to NFL Draft. I'm just so tired, and I'm trying to make it, y'all. I'm trying to make it. But yeah, like I said, 7 days out. So the tight end class, if you listened to me earlier and throughout the process, I've said very blatantly, it's nowhere near close to last year. Not at all. And that, watching the tape, you have a few different opinions, but not enough to change my thoughts on that. I don't think anybody tell you this was even close to last year. You had O.J. Howard, which was just a monster prospect for whatever he ended up doing his rookie year. It doesn't matter. Like, as a prospect, it don't get no higher than him at tight end. And then you had guys like Njoku and Evan Ingram who were freak athletes. But then even still you had guys like Jake Butt, who even with his injury was a real prototypical tight end. You had Jordan Leggett. It's just so many people. And so this class is not even comparable. But I'm going to give this group a C-, and that might be generous. At my first grade was more towards the D+, but C-, there's just nothing at the top. I mean, I have to really push to give them points at the top level talent. So if you didn't hear the rest of my, episodes, I grade the position by top level talent and I grade the depth, and then I average the two. There's some good amount of depth to this class, because a lot of these guys are around the same grade, but the top level talent, there's nothing. I wanted to give it like a 1, to be honest with you, but I gave it some points because you know what? The points I gave it for was Mike Gesicki out of Penn State, because as far as the new age tight end, what you want to do with these guys, he's got a lot of ability. I mean, a former volleyball, basketball player. I mean, he got athleticism up the butt, and he has a lot of experience blocking, but he's not great at it. But it's just like, for his receiving measurables alone, you get super excited. And the other guys are pretty good, but they just don't have the measurables he has. So Gesicki alone gave me a reason to push the top level talent up, but even still is pretty terrible compared to last year. But the depth is good. I think the depth is decent. So getting into the guys that I stand by, there's none. I gotta be honest with you. There's none of these guys, and you can go back and watch my breakdown of the tight ends to see what I think about these guys. But I don't really have a guy out of this group that I'm like, yes, that's the one. Because they all got issues. I mean, you got Mark Andrews, who should be a good prospect, and I think he's good. He's decent, but he's just athleticism questions, and they didn't ask him to do a whole lot of blocking. Then you got a guy like Dallas Goedert out of South Dakota, or one of the Dakotas, and he seems interesting, but the level of competition, you wonder. Then Gesicki, as I already said, a lot of athleticism, but you're not sure what his strength is. And Hayden Hurst, really a good overall, hasn't been playing football a long time, and is an older guy. So they all got question marks, and I just, for me, it's tough to get behind any of these guys, especially when you keep thinking about last year and how good they were. As far as guys that are risky or, I'm not that big of a fan of, I don't have any either, because you know what? It was a funny thing. As much as I think this class isn't as good as last year, I will say that I had a kind of switch for this class when I was thinking about, okay, this class isn't good, and a lot of these bottom tier guys are terrible. But as I watched again and again, I realized, like, okay, there's guys like, and I'll get to the sleepers, but there's a lot of lower tier guys that just, for me, I felt like, wow, okay, you know what? They might not be top level prospects, but tight ends, similar to receivers in a sense, if you get in the right position with the right quarterback, the right offense, you can do things. And so I started to look at glimpses and flashes that I could say, you know what? I can see where that guy could end up being pretty good. And this person might be known as a blocker or might be known as a receiver, but I still see flashes where they can have a complete game. And so I went from like, this is horrible to, you know what? This is okay. And that's kind of where I'm at with the C-. This is an okay tight end class, and some of these lower tier prospects could get to the right place where, like, there are some good teams that need stuff. Like, you talk about the Patriots with Tom Brady, not knowing what Gronk is doing. You talking about Drew Brees. They really want a tight end there. And so it's just places that they could end up and really end up doing some work. So I kind of had a flip, but you know what? There's no guys I stand behind. There's no guys that I hate. I mean, it's a handful of guys in this group to begin with. But as far as sleepers, there's a couple. So one of the guys that's really intriguing and that is kind of under the radar of the main four is Ian Thomas out of Indiana. Now, he's 6'4", 250. He's not gigantic, not exactly undersized, but I don't know, it's tough. Indiana tried to run some spread, some power. So you kind of see him in these traditional situations, but you also see him in a lot of split out wide tight end situations. Then you look at him at the Senior Bowl and you talk about, okay, what was his impact there? And he's an intriguing guy. I think more question mark than comfortable with him, which is why I say sleeper and not a guy I stand by. But I honestly think he can end up being pretty good. I think he's compact of a guy. He's pretty built. He looks stout, but I think he's a lot faster than defenses will give him credit for. And I think he's going to sneak behind some guys. And honestly, if you end up with a right situation, like I said, let's say a Saints, I think he could really wreck shop. And so I'm interested to see what Ian Thomas does. And then Troy Fumagalli, who was a very highly touted prospect. And at first glance, like the first round of evaluation, I'm like, man, he is a terrible receiver, but a good blocker. That's it. He's one-dimensional. But you got to watch more. And some guys, the scheme where they don't get a chance to do a lot, but when they do get to do it, you got to see. And I think second, third time around, I realized he's a little quicker than I thought. He's got a better catch radius than I thought. He's still pedestrian in a lot of his athleticism, but he's more athletic than I thought he was. And so I give him a little credit as a real deep sleeper. And I'm interested to see what he's going to do. And then lastly is Dalton Schultz. Stanford is a power run team, and they expect everybody that starts on that offense to block. So I like him as a blocker. I think he's limited power-wise and core strength-wise, but I think he's a lot quicker and a better route runner than people give him credit for. And so if you watch his limited snaps as a route runner, I think he gives you a lot more than people realize. And so he has a blocking mentality, doesn't have a blocking body, but I think he does have a receiving type skill set. So he'll be interesting to see what happens. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the tight ends. I mean, not a lot to say. I already said, this group isn't what it was last year, but I would like to hear what you think. Go to the comment section. Do you think this tight end group is better than I'm saying? Are there some guys that you want your team to target? Go to the comment section. Let me know. Start the conversation. Thumbs up, subscribe, spread it around, and thank you for listening.